the Dragonborn, one of the most unique and misunderstood races in all of the realms, and also one of the more popular picks in Baldur's Gate 3. And look at Larian's wonderful Dragonborn character designs. They're an incredibly cool looking race. The history of the Dragonborn race is very interesting, but also a bit tragic, and they only recently appeared on the planet of Toril, where Baldur's Gate is located. If you played the original Baldur's Gate games, you would have not even seen any Dragonborn running around, and that is because they were not on the same planet as Baldur's Gate at that time in Forgotten Realms history. With Baldur's Gate 3's timeline taking place over 130 years after the events in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, the Dragonborn have arrived. And not by choice, although their arrival turned out to be a pretty good thing for this race as a whole. So in today's video, we're going to take a deeper look at this mighty race, so you can better understand how they fit into Baldur's Gate 3, whether you're playing as a Dragonborn yourself, or just passing by one on your adventure. This video is sponsored by Larian Studios, which is super cool of them to do that, especially for a lore video, and actually a bit of a blessing. I don't even have to give my opinion on anything, so this is pretty cool. Just a friendly reminder that Baldur's Gate 3 launched on August 3rd for PC, and it's coming out on September 6th for PlayStation 5. I'll leave a link down below if you'd like to purchase the game. Let's jump right into it. Many may look at a Dragonborn and think that they are half human, half dragon. This is actually not the case. Although their origins are shrouded in a bit of mystery, there are some popular origin theories circulating around the realms. One of which being that the Dragonborn were shaped by the ancient dragon god Io, at the same time that Io created dragons. Io's greater spirit creations became the dragons, and the lesser spirits became the Dragonborn. And for much of the Dragonborn's history, the Dragonborn have served dragons. Another legend tells the tale of Io during the Dawn War being killed by a primordial known as the King of Terror. When Io's draconic body was split in half, it created two new gods, Bahamut, the dragon god of justice, and Tiamat, the queen of evil dragons, while the blood that splattered across the world became the first Dragonborn. And another theory is that Io simply created the Dragonborn before the birth of any other humanoid races, and he shaped them and fired them with his breath, and also spilled his own blood to give them life. Those that believe that theory also tend to believe that the Dragonborn are superior to other races and thus should be the master of dragons, and not the other way around. Regardless of one's personal beliefs in the matter, the common theme that binds these tales together are that the Dragonborn owe their existence to Io, the dragon god of creation, and they are not creations of Bahamut or Tiamat. They have no predetermined side in the conflict between those two gods. The Dragonborn, regardless of their own personal ancestry, make their own personal choices in matters of morality. As grandeur as these tales may sound, the Dragonborn did ultimately become, and largely still are, a servitor race to dragons on Toril's twin planet known as Abir, which resides in a pocket dimension. On Abir, the Dragonborn grew to very much resent dragons, and a deep hatred would grow, stemming from their mistreatment. This is why it is shunned in Dragonborn society to worship a dragon god. Several rebellions on Abir would rise up from time to time, but very few succeeded in their efforts. The few clans that were successful would go on to birth the notable Dragonborn nation of Tymanchabar, which is important to Baldur's Gate 3, as the majority of Dragonborn on Toril come from Tymanchabar. The Dragonborn of Tymanchabar created a highly militaristic society that was divided into clans, which are similar to noble houses of other nations, and they fought ruthlessly and bravely against continuous flights of dragons to maintain their freedom. There was also a Dracolich ruler on Abir who constantly raided the lands of Tymanchabar, raising back dead Dragonborn to bolster his army of undead. The Dragonborn on Abir did not have it easy at all, but they did successfully create a state that ruled and protected itself. There was one event, however, that they could not protect themselves from, and that was the devastating event known as the Spell Plague, which greatly affected both the planet of Abir and Toril. In 1385 DR, so 107 years before Baldur's Gate 3, Sirik, the god of lies, with the aid of Shar, the goddess of darkness and loss, murdered the mother of magic, Mystra, causing arcane magic to cease functioning and also aiding and speeding up the overlapping of the worlds of Abir and Toril. This was devastating, as large masses of land swapped from one planet to the other, causing mass destruction, but not complete destruction. A portion of Timanchabar on Abir, specifically its capital region called Jarad Taimar, fell victim to this catastrophic event as this massive portion of land fell onto the planet of Toril, on the continent of Faerun, which is the continent where the city of Baldur's Gate is located. This occurred far east of Baldur's Gate, though, in an area on the continent that previously contained the nation of Unther. Unther and Taimar basically traded places with one another. Out of the ash of this devastating event, the surviving Dragonborn now on the planet of Toril would go on to create the Dragonborn nation of Timanther. By 1479 DR, so 13 years before the events in Baldur's Gate 3, the Dragonborn had formed a strong and steady homeland for the Dragonborn of Faerun and Toril, and Timanther became the strongest center for Dragonborn culture on the planet. Bringing us even closer to the events in Baldur's Gate 3, in 1486 during the Second Sundering, which was a time when the planets of Abir and Toril began separating again. The nation of Unther was returned to Faerun, and the formerly displaced land sought to reclaim all it had lost to Timanther. A god named Enlil prevented this process from fully returning Timanther to Abir though, but Unther was now a part of it. This caused war between the Untherites and the Dragonborn of Timanther, but the Timantherans were able to push the Untherites out of their main territory. To this day, both nations are at war with one another. The Dragonborn, however, must work even harder and with fewer resources to find their place among the people of the world of Toril. So as you can see, the Dragonborn of Toril have quite the past. And despite some of them now being citizens of the continent of Faerun, they are still a somewhat rare sighting to those who live on the Sword Coast where Baldur's Gate is located, as it's quite the journey for a Dragonborn to travel from Timanther to the coast. The Dragonborn from Timanther, despite them coming from such a troubled past, are known to have a high tolerance and show respect to races of all kinds on Toril, while many other races may look at the Dragonborn with a bit of fear. The Dragonborn remain a proud, militaristic race, and they take great pride in achievements of the individual. Every aspect of their life is dedicated by their code of honor, and each member of society is expected to do one's utmost for family and clan. This type of culture and society is what allowed them to survive on Abir under the rule of dragons, and they continue to uphold their traditions even on Toril, where dragons rule them no more. The promise of honor within a clan can drive a Dragonborn to great acts of heroism, all done with the intent of bringing glory to their clan first and the individual second. Thank you all so much for watching, and also thank you to Larian for sponsoring a lore video. I do plan on doing some deeper lore videos that specifically tie into events that we experienced in Baldur's Gate 3, but I wanted to give it a little bit of time for spoiler reasons, as most people still haven't even completed the game just yet. I'll catch you all on the next one.